Hey, welcome into the Fantasy Flow podcast. I am your host, Austin. I'm usually joined by my co-host, Andy, but he's on vacation in New Zealand, living it up just after the regular season concludes. I couldn't be happier for him. So you're stuck with just me for this week. And we just wrapped up the regular season, week 18. It's in the books. And we're going to get to that, and we're going to preview the wild card round. Playoffs start this weekend, and I'm super pumped. We're recording right now. I'm recording on January 8th, and hopefully this will come out the next day to get you all the info that you need for this wild card weekend. But man, I got to start with week 18, right? I mean, we just closed the book on another regular season. Bo Nix and the Broncos punched their ticket to the playoffs. So did Baker Mayfield and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. All the way up to the 3 seed, the third best team in the NFC, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I don't know. We'll get to it. Apologies for not having an episode following week 17. It was because of all the holidays and all the in-laws in town, and Andy and I just couldn't get a time to get together. But the Seahawks, they beat the Bears. We covered that, but then they were eliminated based on some fluky tiebreaker scenario. I'm sure if you're a Seahawks fan, you're fully aware of that by now. Ended up not mattering this last game between the Seahawks and Rams, and that was super unfortunate because that would have been one of the best games of the weekend. But turns out it doesn't matter, and Sean McVay loves to rest his players whenever he gets the chance. So Rams brought their backups, and the Seahawks went in and got another W, bringing the season to 10 wins, the best record of any team to miss out on the playoffs this year. So that's really unfortunate. Another year goes by where the Seahawks are kind of a good, not great team. Another year goes by with Geno where the Seahawks will not get a playoff victory. I don't know. We're going to unpack that more, I think, Andy and I together in the offseason. There's going to be plenty of time to talk about the Seahawks and where they go from here. So I kind of want to save that discussion. But it was a good way to end the season. 2 wins against the Bears and the Rams backups. I'm glad we won those games. I think we had a good season. It was first year with Coach Mike McDonald. Fired Ryan Grubb, which, man, to move on from your offensive coordinator after his first year in the NFL and numbers across the board, it was pretty like league average, the Seahawks offense. I thought he did all right, and I was looking forward to seeing improvement going into year 2, but it sounds like there was just some fundamental differences between Mike McDonald's vision for what his team should be in terms of identity, in terms of what to emphasize with the play calling, and Ryan Grubb's just philosophy. I think Ryan Grubb's a little more pass heavy, and Mike McDonald wanted to really establish the run. Again, we're going to continue that conversation in the offseason, and I know Andy's going to have some thoughts. So we're going to put a pin in that, and I want to talk about some of these other games in Week 18 that actually mattered. Like I said, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers took care of business against the Saints. They are in the playoffs. The Falcons have been eliminated. They didn't even win this week. They lost to the Panthers in overtime. But, man, Michael Penix, he looked good. There's lots to be optimistic about in Atlanta. But definitely, I mean, when you're favored to win your division before the season starts and you show up like that, it's just so tough. And Kirk Cousins is not who you thought you were getting if you're the Falcons. Super sad. One more game that we need to talk about is the Vikings-Lions game. Wow. One of the most anticipated games of the year. I was about to say best, but it was supposed to be the best, and it wasn't one of the best because only one of the teams showed up, the Lions. And it was crazy. I can't remember what the point spread was, but it was so close. I really felt like the Vikings could pull it out because I was really worried about that Lions defense. And man, the Lions defense absolutely showed up, and the Vikings offense absolutely did not. I got some interesting stats here that, sometimes you have a feeling when you're watching a football game, and you're like, man, why isn't this team just doing that? Or like, man, I feel like this one unit is like dominating. And then you look at the box score. Sometimes that's true, and sometimes It's not. It's just kind of seemed that way. That's how you felt during the game. But man, I looked at this box score and it totally confirmed what I was feeling during the game, which is that Sam Darnold's having a bad game. Why is he continuing to throw the ball all the time? Why isn't there more balance? Why aren't they running the ball? It was insane. And I'm going to hit you guys with some stats. The Lions won the game 31-9. It was closer than that for most of the game. The Lions really pulled ahead in that fourth quarter. Jahmyr Gibbs ripped off some nice runs in the fourth, and it was just all over. They were just stomping them. But for most of the game, it was kind of competitive, and the Vikings defense was really keeping them in it. But some stats here. The Vikings running game, Aaron Jones averaged 4.5 yards per carry. And their backup running back, Cam Akers, he averaged 10.8 yards per carry. Now, most of that came on one big play, which is why that number is ludicrous. But still, the running game was absolutely working. The Vikings ran the ball 16 times in 4 quarters. So you ran the ball 4 times a quarter. And you threw the ball 41 times. Sam Darnold threw the ball 41 times, and you ran the ball 16 times. That is insane, especially when Darnold's clearly having an off night. It looked like he was seeing ghosts again, and your running game was just fine. And I don't know why they didn't stick with that for longer. I don't know why they didn't try to get a better balance going. It just seemed like their game plan going in was to just throw the ball, and they did not pivot off that game plan. They could not get Hawkinson going. They didn't get Addison going. They kept trying to force the ball to Justin Jefferson, and this is the part of the show where I want to just give a huge shout out to the Lions defense, because I was wrong about the Lions defense. I thought that they were crumbling, that they were a flawed team at this point. Obviously, they're great on offense. Ben Johnson has that team just absolutely rolling on that side of the ball. But man, the Lions defense, middle linebacker Alex Anzalone, he returned from injury and he looked great. And shout out to their defensive back. I think he's like their top corner at this point. He must be Amik Robertson. Feel like he played man coverage versus Justin Jefferson for most of the game, and he pretty much shut him down. It was crazy. Just this guy totally shutting down the other team's number one option, and it helps when a lot of the passes are inaccurate like they were from Sam Darnold. But that really changed how I felt about the Lions. Not so much the Vikings, because, they're on the road, and we knew the Lions were going to put up points. This just felt like an off game from Darnold, being in a really hostile environment against a surprisingly good defense. I kind of give them a pass. Not saying like they're the NFC favorites, like they're not, but I didn't hold it against them as much as I just gave credit to the Lions. Holy cow. Like, if this team's defense can play like this, well, then they are rightful Super Bowl favorites. They are Super Bowl favorites. Now, they passed the Chiefs after that performance, and I totally get it. And, we'll get there. But, man, Vikings defense showed up. It's kind of funny. Their linebacking core continued to just be insane. Best in the league, probably. Shout out to Van Ginkel, Ivan Pace, and Blake Cashman, all those linebackers. It felt like they really bothered Jared Goff for the first 3 quarters. They didn't really bottle up the run game. I mean, how can you behind that Lions offensive line? But they really had an impact in the passing game. Like I said, TJ Hawkinson could not get going. They were like glue on him, and all the screen passes that the Lions were trying to do were absolutely blown up. Jared Goff threw 2 interceptions, and I'd be terrified to play the Vikings in the postseason. If Darnold has a good game, they're one of the best teams in the league. And I got one more stat for you, and Vikings fans will like this one. Sam Darnold is the first quarterback to ever get 14 regular season wins in his first year with a team. That's pretty crazy. First quarterback ever to get 14 wins in his first year with the team. Sam Darnold. That's wild. I'd love to look up what the Vikings win total was in the offseason. Feel like it was like 7.5 was like the over under, and they won 14 games. So shout out Vikings. And I think that concludes our Week 18 recap. So some housekeeping, and we're gonna cover this more. But after Week 17, I made a post clarifying that yes, we are eliminating the Seattle Seahawks as part of our exercise to eliminate one team from the playoffs every single week. We eliminated the Seahawks. They were actually technically eliminated, so that made it easy. And then following week 18, we just had one more team to eliminate. Fortunately, the Broncos won and took care of business, finally punching their ticket. And that just left the Falcons as the odd team out. So we eliminate the Falcons here after week 18. And yeah, let's go ahead and throw that graphic up on the screen and let's go through what we did this season, Andy and I together. It was a very successful mission, and we set out at the beginning of the season to eliminate a team from the playoffs, one team after each week. So we said, after week 1, Carolina Panthers, you have no chance to make the playoffs. We are declaring you, it's dead, it's over. And we did that for one team after each week. And it was a lot of fun. There was a lot of back and forth, lots of strategy involved too. And let's just go through it. So yeah, the Carolina Panthers after week 1, from what I saw, it looked like the same Bryce Young from his rookie year. And I just thought, no way, this team has no shot to make the playoffs. I don't care if they're in the worst division in the league. They have no shot. And were we right? Yes, but Bryce Young actually did come on at the end of the regular season, and we can talk about that more in the offseason, what that means for them moving forward. But they did miss the playoffs. Week 2, New York Giants. Easy. Yeah, that team nowhere near the playoffs. New England Patriots, Jaguars. Boy, what a disappointment in Jacksonville. Raiders, Browns, Titans. I mean, these are all terrible teams, and we just kind of churned through them one by one. The Saints, man, they got off to a hot start. They were, I think, the highest scoring team in the league through the first 2 weeks. And then they just lost the rest of the games, fired their coach. That was an easy decision at that point. Cowboys, and then the New York Jets. Oh, my goodness. How wrong was I about the New York Jets? If you've consumed any of our content leading up to the start of the regular season, I was so high on the Jets. Let's go over to week 11. We finally eliminated the Bengals, and that was a tough conversation, right? So much better than their record. But man, Andy and I, we just decided that they're too far behind. And were we right? I don't know that we were, because they actually had a chance to make the playoffs if the Broncos lost in week 18. But yeah, a 9-win season for the Bengals. Joe Burrow, one of the best seasons he's ever going to have. Jamar Chase, one of the best seasons he's ever going to have. Trey Hendrickson leads the league in sacks. And just a total wasted season. It's really sad. If you're a Bengals fan. I'm not. So we move on to week 12. We eliminate the Chicago Bears. Week 13 eliminated the San Francisco 49ers, and just all the injuries that they had. Again, super sad if you're a 49ers fan, but it did feel sweet to eliminate the 49ers from the playoffs weeks before the regular season is over. I mean, that's absolutely crazy. Like, when else are we going to be able to say that? And then the next week, another division rival, the Arizona Cardinals. And then week 15, I had finally had enough of the Miami Dolphins, and they were like the Bengals in that they had a terrible record all season, and we just kept hanging on to them, but had to dump them at some point. And, maybe our order of operations was a little backwards, because just like the Bengals, they had a chance there in week 18. They were technically still alive, but close but no cigar. Week 16, we eliminated the Colts. And like I said, Seahawks, Falcons, we did it. We officially successfully eliminated all the NFL teams that didn't make the playoffs, and that feels really good. I know Andy feels the same way. If you've been following along, this is not easy. Okay, some years there are teams that just go on a crazy late season run. We didn't have any of those this year, but I also do pat ourselves on the back for just keeping a level head and just really being able to pick our spots with this and this exercise. And we're absolutely doing it again next year because it's fun to talk about the good teams, but it's also fun to talk just really just get in the muck and talk about these bad teams and why they're coming up short. At least to us, that's a really interesting conversation, I think. So we're definitely going to look to repeat our success next year. What do you say we move on to wild card weekend and we look at these 6 matchups? Those Lions and the Chiefs both get a bye week this week. We have 12 teams that are competing, and we're going to go through each and every game. I'm going to give you my expectations for the game. We're going to break it down. I'm going to make some game picks, and then I'm going to give some betting advice at the end. Let's jump into it, and let's stick in the NFC. Let's talk about the 2-seed Eagles hosting the 7-seed Packers. Yes, the Packers fell all the way to the 7-seed. They really just backed into the playoffs because of all the success they had earlier. They've lost a few games in a row, and Jordan Love actually got hurt in that Week 18 game, and he was actually preparing to come back into the game when it looked like his backup was dealing with an injury. They were about to put him back into the game. So clearly, his injury isn't super serious. He's totally expected to play, unlike one of his wide receivers, Christian Watson. The often injured wide receiver, Christian Watson, tore his ACL again. So he is done for the rest of the year. And I really do not like the Packers' chances against this Philadelphia Eagles team. The Eagles did not earn a bye this week, but their Week 18 matchup was basically a bye. They rested a lot of their players, infamously resting Saquon Barkley, who's already gotten that 2,000-yard season. Could have gone for the rushing record, chose not to. So a lot of their stars are rested, and they're going to be at home, and they're going to be going up against a Packers team that does not look good. They're not in shape, coming off a couple losses in a row. And like I said, without Christian Watson, man, I don't like their chances at all. Part of what makes the Packers so good, obviously their running game with Josh Jacobs. I mean, they ran all over the Seattle Seahawks, right? And that's not the only team that they've victimized in that way. I don't see them doing that to the Eagles, but it's a great run game. And then part of what makes the Packers successful on offense is the fact that they have all these different wide receivers. You never know how they're going to beat you. You know, is it a Romeo Doubs week? Is it a Jaden Reed week? Is it a Christian Watson week? And against teams that have one top DB, that makes it really challenging for that defense because where do you even put that DB? Like they have so many different ways they can beat you. And the Eagles are not that kind of defense. You know, they don't just have one top corner. They have multiple top corners. They have those rookies that we hyped up a couple weeks ago, Quinyon Mitchell, and you have C.J. Gardner-Johnson. Boom, boom. And then you have Cooper DeJean, who, you know, is he a safety? Is he a slot corner? He's a total game wrecker. And then, of course, you have Zach Bond, the linebacker in the middle, who's probably, he is a Pro Bowler, and he's probably going to be an All-Pro. So I do not think the Packers will have much success. The Eagles are favored by 4.5 points. That is not enough, in my opinion. I'm not going to give out exact final score predictions, but I like the Eagles in this game, and I like the Eagles to cover. We'll talk more about that later. But let's move on to the 3 versus 6 matchup. This is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers hosting the Washington Commanders. Okay. Tampa Bay Buccaneers won that last game. The Rams sat their starters, and they allowed the Bucs to actually pass them in the standings. So, and that's a huge deal because the Bucs avoid having to play the Vikings in round 1. In my opinion, and in the opinion of the football cognoscente, there's a massive difference between the Vikings and the Commanders. I mean, the Vikings won 14 games, and the Commanders have a rookie quarterback who they're just overachieving. They have a coach first year coaching that team, quarterback first year in the league. That is exactly the kind of team that I want to play in the wild card round. And credit where credit is due to Jaden Daniels, man. This guy has had a great season. Great season. He's so much better than I thought he would be. We weren't anti Jaden Daniels on this podcast in draft season or the off season. at any point. We weren't anti Jaden Daniels, but man, we really liked Bo Nix, and we liked Bo Nix's odds for Rookie of the Year. And at this point, I don't care who it goes to. And I mean that with sincerity. Like either one of those guys, Jaden Daniels or Bo Nix, they've both earned it. It'll probably go to Jaden Daniels, just like the Heisman. But man, in this game, this is probably the most intriguing matchup of this weekend, because the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Washington Commanders, you don't really know what you're going to get on a given week. These are probably the two most inconsistent contenders that the league has to offer. Man, when Baker Mayfield is on, he's on. I mean, the receiving weapons that he has, Mike Evans, of course, and then Jalen McMillan's been really coming on. He scored a bunch of touchdowns to end the year. He's looking like a real number 2 wide receiver, which is great to see. I mean, they absolutely hit on that draft pick. Shout out UW. And then that backfield that Tampa Bay has, I mean, it's a great 1-2 punch. Now you have Rachaad White, who they said is going to be very involved, and then you have Bucky Irving, and they're going to play off each other, and that's going to be hard to stop for the Commanders' defense, led by Bobby Wagner and Frankie Louvu. I love both of those guys. Those are two of my favorite linebackers in the league. But this Commanders' defense, you can't really say they've been great. Like at any point in the year, this game has the highest over/under of any game this weekend, and I really don't know which way I'm leaning. The Bucs are favored by 3 points. They are at home. But man, I mean, I think I do lean Tampa Bay, but I'm not confident. And that 3-point line feels right about where I would put it. I give the nod to the Bucs because of Baker Mayfield's experience and the fact that on the other side you have a rookie quarterback. It's so rare for rookie quarterbacks to have postseason success. It's really, really rare. I'm struggling to even think of an example where a rookie quarterback has like won multiple playoff games, let alone one. Like I know Russell Wilson won his first ever playoff game, but that was because he was going up against another fellow rookie in RG3. It was the battle of the rookie quarterbacks. One of them had to win. This isn't that. And I really don't like the fact that the Commanders only have one good wide receiver. Terry McLaurin has been awesome, but I just feel like in a gotta-have-it playoff game on the road, you need to be able to go to different weapons. And if Zach Ertz is your number 2 receiving option, I think the Bucs can handle that. And this is actually a rematch of a Week 1 matchup. The Bucs played the Commanders in Week 1, very different, right? That's Jaden Daniels' first ever start in the league, but the Bucs did handle him pretty good. They won 37-20. So I think it's going to be a lot closer than that, but I will lean Bucs. Final matchup in the NFC for this weekend, we have the number 4 LA Rams hosting the number 5 Minnesota Vikings. Unlike the previous 2 games, the road team is actually favored to win, as expected, right? With those 14 wins, we knew the Vikings were a great team all year. Vikings only favored by 1.5. Maybe it's because they're on the road. Maybe it's because Vegas knows something we don't. But that line is crazy to me that the Vikings are only favored by 1.5. Much like the Packers, I feel like the Rams have totally just backed into the playoffs. Very unimpressive, in my opinion, their last few games. Their defensive line is awesome. They have a couple of stud rookies, in fact. But their secondary is not good. And their linebacking core is not good. And I think that they've beaten up on some soft opponents. And Cooper Kupp has totally fallen off the map. I don't know where this guy is. They cannot get him going. Puka Nacua is doing the Lord's work out there, as is Kyron Williams. But I just don't know how long that can last. And against this scary Vikings defense, I just think that the Rams are in trouble. And an interesting wrinkle about this game, the Vikings coach, Kevin O'Connell, understudy of Sean McVay at one point, even though Kevin O'Connell's older. It's not exactly like a Padawan becomes the master scenario. It's not a perfect analogy, but these teams definitely have some history. The head coaches are very familiar with each other, and I just like the Vikings roster so much better. As long as Sam Darnold doesn't completely collapse, I think the Vikings win pretty convincingly. So that's my prediction there. I really like the Vikings, and they're only favored by 1.5 points. All right, we're moving over to the AFC. And again, we're starting with the number 2 seed, the Buffalo Bills. They are hosting the Denver Broncos. And I'm really excited to watch this game. Not because it's super intriguing, not because it's going to be super close or anything like that, just because I really like watching both of these teams. You know, this podcast has been a champion of Bo Nix and what Sean Payton's doing with the Broncos. And I'm glad to see them in the postseason. A lot of what I said about Jaden Daniels and the Commanders does apply to the Denver Broncos. However, I am just skeptical of rookie quarterbacks having postseason success. And I mean, this is pretty obvious, right? Like the Bills are 8.5 point favorites against the Broncos, and I expect the Bills to take care of business. They're so good with Josh Allen. I mean, I don't know how you stop that. I know the Broncos have a good defense, but there's no way I'm picking the Broncos to pull the upset here. That 8.5 line, I don't know about that. I mean, you're on the wrong side of a touchdown. You know, if it was 6.5, I kind of like the Bills to cover, but I don't know about 8.5. So that line does kind of scare me. But man, I just think the Bills are such a complete team. They are absolutely in shape. And yeah, they rested a lot of their starters in Week 18, so they should be healthy and ready to go at home. And yeah, I like the Bills, and we're going to move right along to that next game. We have the number 3 Baltimore Ravens hosting the number 6 Pittsburgh Steelers. This is our only divisional matchup this postseason, at least right now. The Ravens 9.5 point favorites against the Steelers. That blows my mind. I'm a huge Ravens fan. I believe in this team. 9.5, that's a huge number. This is a divisional game. This has a lower over-under. I expect the Steelers to come out with ferocity. That defense, that's a team that I don't want to play in the postseason, and the Ravens have to host the Steelers. I think the Ravens come out on top for sure. I'm not picking Russell Wilson to go into Baltimore and come out with a win. I think it was in our Week 15 recap episode that I made a bold prediction when the Steelers lost. I said, that's it. The Steelers are not going to win another game for the rest of the season. And I said that because they had to go into Baltimore, and then they had to play Kansas City, and then they had to play the on-fire Cincinnati Bengals to close out the season. I said they wouldn't win a game for the rest of the year, including the postseason. And so far, that hot take, which was dubbed as an overreaction by Andy, has actually come to fruition so far. They lost all 3 of those games. And at first, it kind of coincided, their decline coincided with George Pickens being out. But he's come back, and their offense is still terrible. It is totally one-dimensional. It's just Najee Harris, and Najee Harris is not enough. He's a fine player, but he's not enough. He's not a Saquon Barkley. He's not a Derrick Henry. You can't win with just a running game. This is not a Green Bay Packers offense. So with their line and that awesome running game, it's not that. You need to have both elements. And Russell Wilson's played all right, but if he doesn't have George Pickens at his best, they have no chance. And with Pickens coming back, and he has come back, he's healthy. He played in these games that they've lost. Like I said, they're on like a big losing streak. I just don't really see them hanging around with the Ravens. But that 9.5 point line kind of scares me. The other game, number 4 seed Texans versus number 5 seed LA Chargers. And the Chargers, just like the 5 seed in the NFC, the Minnesota Vikings, the Chargers are favorites to beat the home team. In this case, the Chargers are favored by 2.5 points. I don't know. I don't think this game matters. Whoever wins, is probably going to have to go into Kansas City, and they're probably going to lose to the Chiefs. I've been really unimpressed with what I've seen from Houston. I think everyone is. Their receivers are injured, and their defense it has some bite for sure, but the secondary isn't great. And I don't know. I kind of like Jim Harbaugh and the Chargers to handle their business here. Maybe even cover. I don't know. I don't feel super strongly about that, but I do lean Chargers. Man, yeah, I would love to be wrong, though. I would love to see something from CJ Stroud. I would love for him to absolutely go off and really give us something to cheer for, something to get excited about in that divisional round game against the Chiefs. You know, I think a lot of people want to see the Chiefs fall and or at least have a good game. You know, we don't want to just feed a lamb to the slaughter, right? Like that's boring. So yeah, I would love to see CJ Stroud just absolutely on his A game, and vice versa. You know, I'm a big Ladd McConkey guy, so if Justin Herbert and Ladd McConkey can just really light it up, that's going to make me really excited for what's to come in the following week. But yeah, right now, Texans Chargers, classic midday Saturday. I don't know. It feels like a game that should be on Nickelodeon. Is it on Nickelodeon? I don't know.
Hey, just wanted to jump in here real quick to remind you all about our partnership with BETSTAMP. If you're ready to take your sports betting to the next level and you want to support our show, we highly recommend signing up for your next sportsbook through the show's Sign Up Expert link in the description. This will allow you to take advantage of many new user offers available. And don't forget to bet responsibly by tracking all of your bets and getting yourself the best odds through the BetStamp app. Back to the show!
All right. I got some notes. I've looked at all the lines, and I figured out what to do this week. We're putting a parlay together, boys. Okay, we're putting a parlay, and this is a 4-leg parlay, and I'm just doing all money line, which means these teams just need to win outright. I'm picking the Bills, the Ravens, the Eagles, and the Vikings. They're all favorites, and if you parlay them all together, they all have to win. If you parlay them all together, it's about plus 300. So you're tripling your bet if you just bet on those 4 favorites to handle their business. I cannot imagine a world where one of those 4 teams isn't still in the playoffs this time next week. And then my favorite picks against the spread, which I'm not parlaying. This is just individual bets. I like the Eagles to cover 4.5. The Vikings to cover 1.5. And for my third favorite against the spread, I'm taking an underdog. I'm taking the Steelers plus 9.5 because that's the biggest spread of the week. It's a divisional game. The Steelers defense is still good. Mike Tomlin is still experienced. I don't think they're going to win the game, but I think they can keep it within 10 points. Okay, so those are my 3 favorite point spreads this week. Now, we're talking Super Bowl predictions. And next week we'll have Andy back with us, and we're going to hear his Super Bowl prediction. But honestly, I think we're both going to stick with the predictions that we gave in our Week 11 recap. So we had our off-season predictions where we predicted our Super Bowl champion. I predicted the Kansas City Chiefs would win the Super Bowl in the offseason, three-peat. And then little more than halfway through the regular season, we reevaluated that, and we went through the exercise of saying, okay, do we want to change that pick? And Andy and I both decided that, yes, we want to change our pick based on what we've seen these first 11 weeks. We both came to the same conclusion, which is that we are going to see the Detroit Lions and the Baltimore Ravens in the Super Bowl. And I'm not changing now, after Week 18. I think everything that I've seen has only confirmed that. I think Lamar Jackson is still playing like an MVP, and boy, the Lions just absolutely took out the trash against the Minnesota Vikings. And that was very impressive to me. So no, I am not changing. I'm not moving from that. I think it will be Lions and Ravens in the Super Bowl. And man, I think I got to pick the Lions in that one. If they can play that good on defense, we know what their offense can do. If they can be at that level on defense for the rest of this postseason run. I think they're lifting the trophy in February. But I do want to give a shout out to another team that I think is coming up that I think is being really slept on. And no, it's not the Kansas City Chiefs. It's the Philadelphia Eagles. I'm a big Nick Sirianni guy, and I love this win streak that the Eagles have been on. Look, I've kind of talked about it. Our listeners, you've been watching, you've been listening. You know that we're high on the Eagles. I feel like no one's really talking about them when it comes to the Super Bowl. And I get it. The Lions exist. I mean, I just picked the Lions to win the Super Bowl, but if I could pick another team to win the Super Bowl, it would be the Eagles. And that is because I think the Eagles are the most well-rounded team that exists right now. I think offensively, defensively, they have the guys. They have more studs than any other team. They're so healthy. They've dealt with very few injuries. Saquon is at the top of his game. Jalen Hurts, A.J. Brown, they are on the same page again. They got on that same wavelength, and I just think they're going to roll. And when they meet the Lions, I mean, what do you do? Like those are going to be two of the greatest teams. And I feel similarly when the Ravens play the Bills. It's like I cannot believe one of these teams has to lose, but there can only be one winner, right? The Lions and Eagles are both in the NFC. Only one of them can go to the Super Bowl. So that game, I hope we get it, and I think it's going to be awesome. And I would not be shocked if the Eagles actually pull the upset, beat the Lions, and then win the Super Bowl. And that's just because of their balance, offensively, defensively, passing game, running game. I mean, Eagles, Lions, Ravens. Those are the three teams that I've kind of identified as being the top tier Super Bowl contenders. I love all three of those teams. And so when it comes to betting on the Super Bowl, just start off with some pure info for you. The Lions are the Super Bowl favorites at plus 290. So what does that tell you? That tells you, you bet $100. If you're right, you win $290. And they are the favorite. So that tells you that Vegas has no idea who's going to win the Super Bowl this year. There is no clear front runner. There's a lot of good teams. It's very close. The team with the best odds still probably has just like a 30% chance to win the Super Bowl because there's so many great teams still in it right now. The Ravens are plus 550 and the Eagles are plus 700 to win the Super Bowl. All those are very interesting to me. Looking at the sports book, it's going to vary sports book to sports book, but I was looking at DraftKings, and what I'm looking at, what's piqued my interest most, is betting on the exact result of the Super Bowl before Wild Card Weekend. If you bet on the exact result, this being Lions over Ravens, so Lions beat the Ravens in the Super Bowl, that's at plus 1,500. And if you go the other way and you say, okay, Ravens beat Lions, well, that's plus 1,700. So throw $20 on each of those, and you're covered either way if those two teams get there. You don't actually have to pick a winner. So I think that's interesting. And then if you want to go, okay, swap out Lions with Eagles, Eagles beat Ravens in the Super Bowl is plus 3,000. And Ravens beating the Eagles in the Super Bowl is plus 3,500. So, throw 10 or $20 on each of those, and who knows? You could be a winner but before the Super Bowl even starts, if you bet on both outcomes, if those two teams make it. So that's kind of what I've been looking at if we're trying to have fun with it. If not, you can just bet on your team to win the Super Bowl. Like I said, Lions, they're the favorites. They're rolling. They look like the best team. They're going to have home field advantage throughout the whole thing, and they're plus 290. So that's a pretty good bet, honestly. All right, I think that wraps it up for the Fantasy Flow this week. Thank you for joining. Thank you for listening. And good luck, and we'll talk to you next week. Divisional round, baby. Thanks a ton for making it to the end of the episode. You're a real one. Don't forget to like and subscribe. That's a free, easy way to support the show, and it really helps us out. And leave us your comments down below if you're on YouTube, or send in your questions at thefantasyflowpodcast@gmail.com. Until next time.